if we remember, Logan's character arc, The Fall, is going to be the reverse of the hero's journey, right? That's what we're discussing. But what that means is that he's going to have a plot promise, and that plot promise is going to end up negatively. In the case of the hero's journey, the plot promise is positive. So, for example, is it possible to be a better man? In the hero's journey plot structure of things, you would work towards the answer being yes. You can change your stars. You can work every day. You can put in the extra effort to control your emotions and be in control of who you are and who you represent yourself to be. The problem is that in Logan's case, the answer is no. No, it's not possible to be a better man because Logan can't do that. He's not willing to. He's unable to. It's not his fault. He has no choice in the matter. It's hard waking up every day and choosing not to kill children. It's hard every day having your power taken away from you when you relinquish it to other people. It's hard to be going places when you don't advocate for where it is that you're going. It's hard to be Logan. And what we're getting out of this is that Logan's an unreliable narrator. He is ultimately somebody that we shouldn't be listening to. Greetings, I am the Harpy, and I do book reviews. Today we are going to be covering Logan Ninefinger's character arc. It's going to be entitled The Fall. This is going to be the reverse of the hero's journey. This is also going to be a point in time in which we talk about why Logan Ninefingers possibly is an unreliable narrator. Now, I said reverse of the hero's journey, but I should be more specific in my vocabulary. What I actually mean is that it's the mirrored version, it's the inverted version. So if we can imagine in the center of my face right here, we've got a mirror plane, right? We've just got a mirror plane that comes down and hangs out. If I take my hands and I put them here, you can see how we can imagine that that mirror plane is causing one hand to cause the other hand to reflect. We can also see how my thumbs in this instance would be closest to the mirror plane. That means that the sequence of my fingers, starting with my thumbs, is going to be in order. It's going to be consistent. This is the same kind of logic that we're going to be applying to the first law in terms of this inversion process. The sequence of events stays the same, but the thing that happens is opposite. Getting started with our template, we're going to be looking at one for the hero's journey, though the outcome of the hero's journey is typically a positive one. The steps are going to be the same in the structuring of Logan's arc, which is entitled The Fall. The Fall is going to be a variation on the hero's journey in which the outcome is negative. So, in the example of Logan, is it possible to be a better man? The fall would be no. The hero's journey would be yes. The first step in the hero's journey or the fall is going to be the ordinary world. This is going to be where our hero is living their everyday life. This is where they're doing dishes, wishing for adventure. This is going to be where they are in conditions beyond their control and suffering. This is going to be when the story starts. Where does our character find themselves at the beginning? Do they have a special skill set that is going to aid them, like being a smith in the later part of the story? Or are they suffering to give us empathy for their situation? What is going on at this beginning? And what does it mean? In the case of Logan Ninefingers, Logan is running barefoot without a coat through mud and slush away from pig people that are hunting him down in the middle of a forest. it's a violent introduction for a violent man. And really, what we are getting in this ordinary world is that Logan lives a life of violence. He lives a life of combativeness. He is, if anything else, a man of war. And that is ultimately what we get in this ordinary world. Now, this is a subversion, or at least it was a subversion at the time when this was released, of the typical introduction to a character. Character normally is trying to avoid doing dishes again, trying to um, sneak off to meet with their lover in the woods. Something something kind of benign but spicy, something that we can all kind of relate to. The part that's interesting about Logan being introduced to us this way is that it's another one of these character promises where Logan is a violent man. He lives a life of violence, and we're going to see that throughout the progression of the story. The next step after the introduction is going to be the call to adventure. This is going to be yet another one of these subversions that I kind of referenced in my first video, but I'll get into a lot more in this video. The subversions that I'm referring to are that mirror plane, that idea that something is different. This is where things diverge. This is going to be where Logan, instead of having a call to adventure, something falling in his lap, a deus ex machina type situation, Logan calls on the spirits to seek their guidance. And that is the impetus for this story, is that there's a magi looking for Logan. And Logan wants to know what this magi wants of him. The problem here is twofold. Problem number one is that this entire thing going on in the first law is gonna be Logan's fault. His entire narrative, his entire story, everything at this point forward is going to be Logan's fault because he chose to seek guidance, he chose to listen to the spirits, and he chose to seek out a magi, which leads me into my second point, which is with Logan Nine Fingers, the Bloody Nine's reputation, what possible reason would anybody ever have to find Logan if not for violence? Before you start typing the comment about Baez needing Logan because of the spirit talking ability, I would like to ask the question of why would Logan, who has never been utilized for his spirit talking ability to my knowledge, why is Logan suddenly curious about what his reputation would allow for? What his actual reputation would indicate he is skilled at? And I think that that's an important point to highlight. I understand that this point is a little tenuous, but at this point, Logan has no reason to consider his spirit talking as the reason why Baez would be interested in him. That leads into the next point, which is going to be the refusal of the call. Yet again, another subversion. Logan answers the call, pretty willingly, actually. And again, we should be kind of leery of that. That doesn't seem like a good judgment. And it's kind of interesting that Logan, who has got food and for most parts happy out in the woods, why he would want to change a pace, what he's missing, what void he's trying to fill. The next step is meeting the mentor. This is when we meet Baez. This is going to be when we get all of the warm fuzzies of having a stern grandfather character in our lives. Except those warm fuzzies go away when you realize it's not a hard exterior. It's the realization that the mentor is not a mentor. Just as Kwai, the herald, is not really a herald. These are character tropes. These are the stereotypes within the hero's journey. And the thing that is interesting about them is simply the lengths to which Joe went to subvert them. The next step is going to be the crossing of the threshold. This is going to be our step into the extraordinary world, the world of magic, the world of mayhem. Wherever it is we're going, this is it. This is going to be the Northern Library. We're going to be crossing into the other side. Just kidding. We're going to be crossing into the Northern Library, and the reason why we're crossing into the Northern Library is that this is where Logen feels like a new man. This is him cleaned up. This is also going to be a chapter promise. In the last Argument of Kings, there is a chapter entitled New Man, The New Man. I don't remember which one specifically, but it's calling back to this moment in the Northern Library where Logen is clean, he's well fed, he has clothing that doesn't itch, and he figured out a way to sleep. He wasn't able to sleep in the bed, but he could sleep on the floor outside. Logen is a happy camper. This is going to be the other side for Logen. This is it. He's made it. This is the world of magic. This is also going to be the apex of who Logen can be. He takes ownership of who he is in this moment. He acknowledges the people that he's hurt and the lives that he's ruined and the atrocities he's committed. It's the best of Logen. Logen who is honest with himself and not fighting for his life. A Logen that is not forgiving, but sympathetic, knowing that he did bad things. But he can work to be a better person now. He can always work now to be a better person. And that's who Logen is at this moment, talking to Kwai in the Northern Library, is the best version of himself. And that's why this is a subversion, is that the crossing of the threshold is actually the peak of another kind of arc that's happening. And that's going to be the crossing of the threshold in the overarching arc. We've only been talking about the blade itself. The question that Joe is answering in the case of Logen is whether or not it's possible to be a better man, right? That's the overarching arc for Logen over the course of the 3 books. And the part that we're discussing right now is that the crossing of the threshold for that arc, that's going to be entitled The Bloody Nine. That's that chapter. Because what we're exploring in the overarching arc is different than what we're exploring in the immediate arc. The immediate arc is just Logen likes to be well fed and well taken care of. That is magic for Logen. He lives in the wilderness. He lives violently. Having a safe place to sleep, healthy food, clean water, like he's living a high life right now. The comparison to who Logen is emotionally in these 2 chapters is another one of those subversions against each other. It's that mirror plane thing I was talking about. Because you can see how Logen at his best would be the opposite of Logen as the Bloody Nine, especially when the Bloody Nine is not who Logen wants to be. That is Logen's downfall. After we have the crossing of the threshold, it's going to be test allies and enemies. This is going to be when we're introduced to our traveling companions and demonstrated their remarkable abilities. This is on the nose. Instead of being subtle, Joe is very loud with Brother Longfoot and his remarkable abilities. For those who are editors, writers, people who study literature, people who would have some frame of reference, this is an inside joke. This is Joe being very loud and vocal with the remarkable abilities of Brother Longfoot. This is also when we find out that another one of our companions is a cheater, albeit not of his own volition, but he won by cheating. And god damn if the last one isn't a bitch. Now, this section is the one that spreads the furthest of most narratives. So what you can think is that there's overlap between some of these sections. This one has the widest breadth. So timeline wise, don't track this one in terms of when it happens, because this one happens over the course of a longer period of time. This is when you find out that somebody has a hidden backstory of being a healer that has been alluded to the entire time because they know plants, or somebody is a smith and is able to fix the holy sword so that you can slay the demon king. That is going to be the kind of stuff that can come out over time. And that's what that section or this section can include, is a lot of that side character information. The next section is going to be the inmost cave. This is when shit sucks. This is going to be where Logan gets into a knife fight with Brother Longfoot, in addition to running through the Agriont portion with Pharaoh. Those two things are the two ends of the spectrum that we are looking at for scene inversion, that mirror plane again. It's the comparison of who Logan is in two violent situations. So the first one, Logan is somehow knifeless in a knife fight for the man who can never have too many knives. And he has to defend himself. And so it's self-defense. He does well in it. He tries to use his words as best as he can. In the latter one, he is trying to avoid being in violence. He's running away. He's not actively fighting. He's not doing any of that. But inevitably, the Bloody Nine comes out. I'll go ahead and do the requisite. I am not a medical professional. I am not learned in psychology, but I know that Joe is. And I know that Joe is a perfectionist. And what that means for me is that it's predictability in the ways that characters are going to behave in certain moments. So, for example, Logan has what I believe to be CPTSD. I also have CPTSD. That is why I'm ascribing it to Logan, is because I see similar behavioral details in addition to DID. I do not have DID, but I am well versed in conversations associated with DID. The part that I find problematic about Logan's character when he turns into the Bloody Nine specifically is that he does so when he loses power. And the power and control thing for Logan is throughout the book. The next bit is going to be the ordeal. The ordeal is not an ordeal. Again, another subversion. This is going to be where Logan sits on his ass and complains about his fruits. Uh, this is going to be the tournament. This is when Giselle is fighting, and Logan has to come to terms with whether or not he's going to follow a man that he has fundamental ethical differences with. And he doesn't take the opportunity, as we know, to assess whether or not Baez is somebody that, wait a second, should I be hanging out with this guy? But ultimately, it's just another subversion of what it's supposed to be. Logan is hanging out. He's doing nothing. That's the subversion of this particular moment. And the reward would be the sword. He gets Canadius's sword, that double-edged sword. Um, This is another one of these motifs that I'm going to bring up in a future video. But I'm going to go ahead and highlight it now. That sword is important for motif reasons. It's one of the many examples of the metaphor driving the narrative and how we are supposed to be interacting with the different characters. But that is this section, is the reward. Logen gets a sword for doing nothing. The next step is going to be the return. This is going to be when we are getting chased through the city again. Now, I said that we had already used that in the inmost cave, right? We were using it as when they were getting attacked in the city without having swords or having knives, and then we're getting it over here again with being chased through the city. It's because that these two scenes are doing the hand thing again. They parallel each other. What we get is a different Logen in both of those instances, right? We get the Logen who is trying self-defense and only self-defense, and then we get the Logen that is fleeing and fighting in order to get away. It's one of those very subtle moments where Logen is progressing. He's progressing into a worse version of himself. And that's why the return is going to be getting chased through the city, is he's returning to who he's going to be. And the resurrection chapter, it's going to be the Bloody Nine. That's going to be when we get into who Logen really is. That is Logen. That's who he is. He is the Bloody Nine. He says it himself in the last argument of Kings. He's the Bloody Nine. He should scare everybody. He scares himself. So that's going to be the basics of the arc. Now, the last step in the hero's journey is going to be it's like returning with the elixir, is what a bunch of the diagrams like to say. I like thinking of it as master of both worlds. He is now master of anger and master of not anger, of calmness, of centeredness. These are the examples that we would get if Logen was going to be following a hero's narrative. But because he's following a negative narrative, a villain's narrative, he is unable to accomplish this. And that's why this section doesn't exist, because we don't have a master of both for Logen. In addition to the fact that this portion of the narrative journey acts as the introduction to the larger arc. So it's filling multiple roles. By my estimates, we are currently at about 20 minutes on the video length. So I'm going to go ahead and call it at this video, just because I think that there's a lot of information that I'm going to be throwing at the wall, and I want to see what information sticks and doesn't stick. But if you see anything wrong in the diagram that I am providing at the end of this video, feel free to hit me up. I would love to be able to correct it before I make more videos on it. This is just my interpretation of the character arcs for Logen in the first law. As you can see, it goes over the blade itself before they are hanged, last argument of Kings, and all three. Each different component of the books is in a faded red to the vibrant red that is in the all three. That's kind of just tracking where the overarching arc comes from and how Joe navigates getting four unique arcs in a story for the same character.